Okay, I make it about a minute past 11, so I think we'll make a start. Thank you very much for coming along and joining this session. That we're doing a series of 4 short sessions with ourselves, NetApp and Veeam, over the next 4 weeks. You're all on mute, so if you want to ask any questions, then please feel free to do so in the Q&A, and we will attempt to respond. You'll also receive links to the material afterwards. My name's Mike Walters. I'm one of the solutions architects at NetApp for EMEA, and I've been a veteran of NetApp for over 20 years now, and I'm a very big fan of simple data protection techniques. I'll give you a short introduction to this session, and then my good friend Kevin Ridings from Veeam will take you through a whiteboard, or more specifically, a green board for some details on it. I don't know if any of you are customers of Virgin Broadband, but I'm going to stop my video because it has had dropped me out of a few Zooms over the last 3 months. So I'll save some of the bandwidth and protect it. Okay, so yeah, moving on with the content. Perception's a powerful thing, and I sometimes ask customers what they think of when they think of NetApp. We very much carved out a niche for fast, simple, reliable NAS storage known as filers, and that drove a new market in the early 2000s. As we moved forwards, we had to lead customers to understand how we make effective use of flash as they moved towards a more virtualized world, a more software-defined one. And nowadays, we tend to be talking more about hybrid cloud data services. And that's, changing the way people build their data centers, how they operate their data centers, and giving them many choices. So a few years ago, certainly when Kevin and I began our careers, and probably many of you, the data center was very much focused on on-premises solutions. You had a data center in your environment. Companies had an IT department managing it, and pretty well everything was in-house. The world started changing, and we had the rise of Amazon with AWS, Microsoft with Azure, and now Google Cloud Platform offering hyperscaler environments. So about 6 years ago, NetApp started talking about helping their customers build a data fabric. And this is really around managing the infrastructure, the platform, the services in a way to let them operate efficiently and effectively. A lot of times in the early days, people are moving data out to the cloud. Sometimes they discover at a certain scale, it makes more sense to move it back in-house and take more control. So there's a range of ways that can move, and the cloud is still very much a maturing environment. Giving this data fabric starts to give customers a freedom of choice, and that helps create value, which lets you be more agile in how you operate. You can choose where you move things, where you have them. If we can keep things as simple as possible, then it also allows you to accelerate your business capabilities. And that, again, is very important in this day and age where we don't have lots of deep technical expertise to manage a data center. Underlying all of this is data protection and having the right protection everywhere. And that, to me, is fundamental to what both Veeam and NetApp do. It leads to greater data availability. It helps people run their businesses knowing that the data is safe and sound and can be easily recovered. Evaluator Group conducted a survey on data protection. One thing I've noticed over the years is that protection can be very sticky. People build a solution, they put it in, they don't want to change it in a great hurry because it has an impact on things they want to recover from 6 months ago, from maybe several years ago. But what Evaluator Group found was that a lot of the customers in the market were going to implement a data protection change over the next couple of years. They want to simplify how they do things. Now, we partner with Veeam to deliver the ability to modernize that protection, to help simplify IT and help build multi-clouds for speed and the agility to help address this change for you. So a large number want to add data expansion. There's a lot of, sorry, just leapt on a little bit there. A lot of decision makers are finding that the costs of accessing their data are growing and that they want to minimize any disruption. They're looking at solutions that can help with keeping malware, ransomware out of their infrastructure. And there's a lot of detail and a lot more than we will go to in this first session. So these are just background things. A lot of customers want to be able to store their backups on agile platforms. So they might have gone through some infrastructure change, but they still lack a lot of benefits on it. And NetApp's Data Fabric and Veeam helps make it easy to protect. So one thing that we talk about being better together, and we find that a lot of customers have disjointed data management environments. They can't get into the potential of their data because they can't easily access it, and they're dealing with growing threats elsewhere in the business. And businesses IT solutions become more and more complex over time. It's almost inevitable that that happens. So what we want to do is simplify things as much as we can to ease that pain, to help you protect data everywhere, to give you a simple solution as is possible, to future-proof them as well. And NetApp, we've got a heritage of providing solutions for over 20, 25, 26 years now. We want you to help give you the ability to move forwards in a way that will let you get value out of that data. Make it so that you can know that you can verify your recoveries, that you can make use of any secondary copies, and to ease how simple you can deploy it. Make it very simple to manage, give you visibility into what you've got. So on that point, I think I'm going to hand over to Kevin, who's going to take you into a little bit of a green board, Kevin.
Thanks very much, Mike. Yeah, so welcome. Kevin Ridings, Alliance Systems Engineer for Veeam Software. And as Mike said, we're going to be bringing together the two technologies in the first of our 4 sessions. And it's really going to be talking about the integration and blending the use of perhaps the data protection within NetApp, so those snapshots, and true Veeam backups together to deliver that really very simple, reliable, cohesive data protection strategy. So we're going to draw out some of the solutions that we're looking at, and it's around that, as I said, that deep integration with the storage. So we're going to be starting with a very traditional, you can see on the left-hand side there, a VMware estate, hosting some virtual machines, lots of applications in there, and perhaps you would have a secondary location as well. That secondary location could perhaps be in some cloud architecture, some infrastructure as a service architecture, or could be a secondary location owned by the same customer. But that's where we like to start, that sort of base infrastructure. Obviously, what we would have underneath that base infrastructure would be some NetApp storage. So if we look at some of the data volumes, we get some of those under there. And that would be traditionally a filer, so an on-tap device. If we're looking in the primary location, this could also be SolidFire, so it could be HCI. So once we're looking at the storage underneath that virtual estate, we would need to understand, well, the actual virtual data itself is held within volumes on the actual storage itself. So we're going to need to be able to protect that. Obviously, there is data protection within the ONTAP systems themselves. You are able to create snapshots, and they would be able to be perhaps mirrored and vaulted, but we'll look at that in a second. But there's more you can do. As I said, it's about blending the use of the technologies together. So bringing some Veeam technology into this architecture. So if we look at bringing some Veeam in, I always draw Veeam in green. The 3 main components of Veeam, you would be looking at the main UI, the Veeam backup and replication, the proxy, which is our data mover, our workhorse. It goes and gets data, it deduplicates data, and it transits data to another location. And we have our repository. Repository is where we would want to store our primary backups, so off technology backups. And an ideal repository would be something like a NetApp E-Series. So this down here could be a NetApp E-Series hosting those primary backups. And we'll go through the process of actually creating those backups in a second. But you can see left-hand side, primary location, right-hand side, secondary location, which we'll come on to in a few minutes. And the E-Series in the middle there, it's going to be used for that first stage of backup. So what we actually do when we're creating a backup, utilizing the Veeam backup replication interface, we address the virtual machines that we're wanting to protect. So we would select the particular virtual machines that we're wanting to protect within a particular job. And then what we'd actually do, we would go in guest into those virtual machines, and we can perform a number of operations once we're in guest of those operating systems themselves. And the reason for this is application consistency. So we would have the ability to trigger any VSS writers. We're able to operate perhaps any custom scripts, pre-freeze, post-store scripting for some custom applications. We can also truncate some logs. We can take care of anything that's in guest of those particular virtual machines before we make the next step. And the next step would be actually creating a hypervisor-based snapshot. So down on the storage, you can see the blue snapshots there would have been perhaps NetApp created or even Veeam orchestrated NetApp snapshots. But in the normal process of a backup, what we would actually do is before any snapshots are actually created, we would actually be using the, as I said, the hypervisor based snapshot. And so we would go across to the virtual machines, we'd go in guest, we'd quiesce, we'd trigger those VSS writers, truncate logs, we'd run any scripts. We'd then create a hypervisor based snapshot, still the most graceful way of quiescing a virtual machine. As soon as we've created that, we would orchestrate and instruct the ONTAP storage to take a snapshot of that state. That would then allow us to commit that hypervisor-based snapshot and release those virtual machines back into normal operations. So the hypervisor-based snapshot has not been in play for any long period of time. But the key now is we have that snapshot fully quiesced, fully application consistent state, and we have the ability to mount that snapshot. We have the ability to mount that snapshot via the Veeam proxy. So no need to mount that to a host. It's mounted directly to the Veeam proxy. We're then able to write that through the proxy, through the repository. But very importantly, we're using change block tracking. Because we've used the hypervisor-based snapshot, we have that change block tracking that we can leverage. We then write that down into our repository, so on the E series, creating that first full. On incremental passes, we would use the same technology and write out a particular incremental chain here showing a further forward incremental and delivering that's off technology data protection. We also have the ability to create some archive points, perhaps if we wish, some monthlies, quarterlies, weeklies, yearlies, and that would be possible within that first piece of storage. So what we've done here is we've created an off technology backup, but leveraging the power of the ONTAP storage. So the reason for using those snapshots is to actually have less impact on the particular virtual machine. But there is another way that we can create less impact. Once we have the NetApp snapshot on the primary device, we have the ability to use SnapMirror technology to actually take that across to a secondary device. So we could have used the SnapMirror technology and brought that snapshot across to the secondary device. So we would have that represented here. So it's possible if we didn't wish to take the backup out of the primary location, which we did here, you have the ability to mount that from the secondary location and write that down via and leveraging that secondary location to the repository. So really taking that data movement out of band. But just really to make it clear, it's about leveraging both technologies together. So if we take a typical day, so you have a day that goes across here, and you could look at perhaps, if we look at, it could be in the morning, of an evening, we could be looking at 8 p.m. So creating a backup at 8 p.m. And then again in the next 8 p.m., a backup, of course. But leveraging the two technologies together, you would have those very space efficient and time efficient snapshots happening periodically, maybe every hour during the day. So you would be able to use those snapshots orchestrated, fully application consistent, even from within the Veeam UI, as recovery points. So a restore operator can choose either the 8 p.m. true off technology backup, or one of those very space efficient, time efficient snapshots that have been happening during the day, and pick those and use those in exactly the same way. So it's no different from recovering from a backup, recovering from a snapshot. There's one more option, really, just before we take a look at a couple of recovery options, is perhaps a customer doesn't have budget for an off-technology backup, doesn't have the budget for an E-series here. Obviously, very cost-effective storage, but perhaps, and some customers have very constrained budgets. So what you can do within Veeam is just orchestrate those application consistent snapshots. So if we look at the left-hand side, we're able to fully go into those guest operating systems and trigger VSS writers, truncate logs, run any pre-freeze and post-thought scripts, take that hypervisor-based snapshot, then take the NetApp-based snapshot. Then we SnapMirror that to a secondary location, giving you that full application consistent snapshot across both locations. And that's possible. There is no absolute requirement to take that out to a different piece of storage, such as an E-series. But in a cohesive data protection strategy, that is something you would want to do. So just moving on to a couple of restore options. So once we have either the backups created in this manner or the snapshots created in this manner, and we've looked at the timeline across the bottom there, we have the ability to perform different types of recovery. And the possibilities there are we can perform individual item recovery for perhaps Exchange, for SharePoint, for Active Directory. So it makes it very straightforward. In fact, all the explorers we have for sort of Active Directory, for SharePoint, for Microsoft SQL, for Oracle, you can perform all those different types of recovery in about 4 clicks. And it really doesn't matter whether it's coming from a snapshot or whether it's coming from a backup. We really like to keep things, as Mike said earlier, keeping things very simple, making data protection very straightforward. You don't want your data protection to be complicated. You don't want to be difficult to use, of course. So some of the values we have at Veeam is the ability to protect data anywhere, create good value with that data protection, and keeping it simple and flexible and, of course, reliable. So this has been a very, very quick view into the first piece of the NetApp integration. And what we're going to be doing over the coming the following sessions is giving you the ability to take a look at Veeam and NetApp protecting NAS, so the seriously powerful new NAS data protection we have within Veeam, and that's going to be coming on July the 15th. We're then going to be looking at our quite innovative integration with that SnapMirror technology for failover and disaster recovery with our availability orchestrator on NetApp, and that's on the 22nd of July. Then coming on July the 29th, we're going to be looking at a great integration with and providing business continuity with Storage Grid and Veeam together. So this has been the first of these sessions, and what I'd like to do now, just ask Mike if he's got a few words to wrap up the session, and thank you.
Yeah, nice one, Kevin. That's really good whiteboard, green board. We'll call it a white-green thing. Excellent. Yeah, so this gives you the weekly schedule for the next 3 weeks after today, all at the same time. Hopefully you can join in with some of these. I've put a couple of links in here. There's a white paper, and there's also some blogs which take you through, in some cases, little podcasts, information about some of our integration points. Only question I saw in the Q&A was from Elja. Thank you for that. Yeah, asking about SnapLock integration. There's no direct SnapLock integration with Veeam, but what you can do is back up to a CIFS share as a normal Veeam kind of target repository, and then bounce that on with SnapVault and lock the snapshots there. So there are things that can be done to make those backups immutable. Other than that, thank you very much. I don't think there's any other questions coming in. Thanks very much for your time, and hope this has proved a useful snippet for you. Quick 20-minute introduction to the partnership that we have. Okay. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Mike.
We'll hang on a few minutes in case there's any more open questions. You can pop in for a few minutes, but sure. I guess we can pause the recording there, Dennis. Thank you very much.